Hello and welcome to the RotoWire WNBA show, where we talk about fantasy basketball. I'm Jason Shebilske alongside Kirien Sprecher. Today, we will discuss our final draft strategy tips, including players to avoid and players who could have breakout seasons. We'll also talk about some of the latest news from around the league, including the news that Dorka Juhas will miss the 2025 season. Those looking to subscribe to RotoWire can use the promo code ROTO15 at checkout for 15% off RotoWire product. Now, I know the past few shows we've talked about all of the great fantasy tools that RotoWire has, and it is fantastic for fantasy advice. But I think Kirien and I can both say that it is great for sports betting content. We have our WNBA Best Bets article every year, and there's often plenty of value to be found in sports books for WNBA bets. And RotoWire will get you the advice that will help you out and help you to find the best bets throughout the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Will always tell the story about a couple of years ago when Odyssey Sims was on like a 7-day contract or 10-day contract, whatever they call it in the W, and her contract had expired, but FanDuel and DraftKings still had lines up. So it was like Odyssey Sims 5.5 assists, and you were just all over that and hammered it because you are the WNBA expert. So that's just always a great story when I tell WNBA betting content stories.
Thank you. And they wound up voiding the bet, but it just goes to show that there is a lot of value to be found. If you're paying attention to the WNBA, a lot of times you can hopefully make a lot of money during the season.
And it's not like college sports where, there's 400 teams, there's only 12 teams. So it's a little easier for us to stay on top of it. And I do think, like you said, we do have a little bit of an edge because we are so on top of WNBA news.
Absolutely. And then throughout today's show, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments and we'll get them answered. If you ask live, we'll answer them on the show, but we'll also be active in the comments afterward on social media and on YouTube to provide any additional insight. Our handles for social media can be found at Jason Shebilske, at Kirien Sprecher RW. If you tweet at us with questions about the WNBA, we'll get them answered ahead of your drafts. So Kirien, now that we're less than a week from the regular season, who are some players that you're avoiding in fantasy drafts this year?
Yeah, I don't need to go too in depth on this. I talked about it on Friday's show too. I am fading Breanna Stewart. That doesn't mean that I'm not drafting her, but I'm not taking her with a top 5 pick. I think she's going to play tonight in the Expedition game. We'll see how many minutes she plays. But when you have a star player coming off a championship, and you're already dealing with like a knee injury, that's just a sign to me that there's going to be a lot of rest days for Breanna Stewart this year. There's going to be a lot of nights where she doesn't need to carry the scoring load. There's going to be a lot of nights where she doesn't need to play 30 plus minutes because this Liberty team is deep and talented. And I'm like, sure, Stewie's going to have some monster games. She's going to have some nights where she's the top scorer for a week or whatever, but I just don't think she's going to be doing that every single game, every single week. So I would go with my top 5 picks. I'd go A'ja Wilson, Caitlin Clark, Napheesa Collier, Arike Ogunbowale, and then Alyssa Thomas. And then I would have Stewie at 6. So I'm not saying like don't draft Stewie at all. I'm just saying I wouldn't take her with the top 5 pick just because there might be a lot of rest days and a lot of limited production from her.
Yeah, and I think that's a very fair assessment. Anytime we talk about a multi-time MVP like Stewart, she's going to provide you good first-round value. Really, if you're drafting her anywhere in the first round, you'll get good value. But as with all fantasy, it's all about opportunity cost. So do you want to pick Stewart over a player like Collier, Arike Ogunbowale, Alyssa Thomas? That's a question that you'll have to ask. I think I still have her at 3, but I think that it's definitely more of a case can be made this year for other players at that 3 spot than in previous years.
Yeah, and Alyssa Thomas, I feel like could be a long debate. We could have a whole debate on Breanna Stewart, Alyssa Thomas. Alyssa Thomas going to a new team. We're not really sure what to expect. But with A'ja Wilson, Clark, Collier, and Arike, I think those guys or those gals, those players are all the top number 1 options on their teams. And I think all of those teams are going to be pretty good this year. I think the wings with Beckers they're going to be improved. And I think Arike is going to go off every night. Like, I think she's going to there's going to be a new fire under her. Like, I got a new teammate. We can win some games, like maybe get back into the playoffs. So I just think that those 4 have a higher upside than Stewie at this moment.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair assessment. Moving to another front court option who was last year in the top 15. This year she's fallen a little bit to number 23, but Ezi Magbegor is a player who has been a solid fantasy contributor in the past, but she'll have a lot of competition for work with the Storm this year. We already had a glimpse last season because the Storm had Neka Ogwumike in the fold, but Magbegor's production really dropped off once Gabby Williams joined the team after the Olympics. Before Williams returned to the WNBA, Magbegor had looked to be roughly on pace to replicate her fantasy production from 2023. Her scoring numbers were down a little bit, but her rebounds were up a little bit, so it basically canceled out. However, after Williams returned to the WNBA, which was over like the last month or so of the regular season, Magbegor averaged just 8.9 points and 5.6 rebounds in 27.1 minutes per game. If you apply this to a full season, this would have been her worst production since becoming a full time starter. Gabby Williams announced this weekend that she isn't going to participate in Eurobasket this summer, so she should be a full time player for the Storm, which makes me really nervous, especially since Dominique Malanga should have opportunities to develop as a rookie. Magbegor, as I said, is still number 23 in my rankings, and I think that she will have some decent performances, but she's around other front court options in Natasha Howard and Brianna Jones. Those two players are also on teams who will have increased competition. Howard, we've talked about the fever and how many mouths to feed there will be, especially in the front court. And Brianna Jones will have to play alongside Brittany Griner. But that's kind of the range that Magbegor is in now, where you have the risk of the players of other strong players around them, as opposed to a player like Alyssa, I guess Alyssa Thomas and also Breanna Stewart, who they're basically the one option in the front court. That used to be how it was with Ezi Magbegor, but that's not really the case anymore.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. And I think having her, where you do in the rankings around 20 is fine still because this Seattle team could be really good. I'm a little hesitant to say that they will be really good. They could be though. They could be really good. I think if they are good, there's going to be plenty of production to go around, right? But if they struggle, there's going to be, that's when things are going to get risky. So I think, it's still fair to put her, rank her around 20, but should be a lot of caution flags with Malinanga, like rookie stepping up. Gabby Williams playing the whole season. There are a lot of concerns with Ezi for sure. I think that's totally fine. And, adding even more concern, I'm looking at players like Satou Sabally and Julie Vanloo as other players that I want to avoid in drafts. And it's not because I don't like them as players. These are two of actually my favorite players in the league. If you followed the show at all last year, Julie Vanloo was a darling, like just fantastic in fantasy. And Sabally obviously dealt with some injuries, but when she's on the court, she's awesome. But both of these players, Satou Sabally and Julie Vanloo, might play in Eurobasket. There's no like real official rosters yet. It starts in just over a month, maybe 5 weeks from now. But it's very possible that both of these players are going to miss a month of the season in Eurobasket. Satou wasn't. She didn't represent Germany during the prelims for this tournament. But on their roster, it says on their prelim roster, there's an asterisk and it says WNBA players to be named later. That really sounds like that's going to be Satou Sabally. And then for Vanloo, Belgium hasn't released their roster at all. But Vanloo, if we remember her dynamics at the Olympics, she was a huge player for Belgium. So those are two players where I really like them. I would take them with their ADP if this wasn't a possibility, but the possibility of missing a week or missing, not a week, a month of the season kind of gives me some red flags there.
Yeah, and I have concerns about both of them, even if you just remove Eurobasket. So even if they don't wind up playing in Eurobasket, I think that they have enough question marks that I'm still kind of fading them. Obviously, any player, if they fall enough in the rankings, I'll take them. Like if I have Satou Sabally at number 21 in my rankings, I don't know if I'm quite taking her there, but if she falls to maybe like 26, 27, then I'll strongly consider her. But with Sabally, like you said, she's only played more than 17 games in a season once in her career due to injuries. So there's no guarantee that she's going to be healthy throughout the season or even at Eurobasket time. And even if she is dealing with like some soreness or something, I could see her using the time that she would for Eurobasket just to kind of sit out a few games and get some rest. The Mercury have a decent number of strong options this year with Kalia Copper and Alyssa Thomas as well. So Sabally can afford to miss those games every once in a while if she does need rest. And I think that might be in the Mercury's best interest if they want to keep her healthy for as much of the season as possible. So I would be absolutely shocked if she plays like in the 40 to 44 game range this season. And I would be even a little bit surprised if she winds up playing in the 30s range. So with that kind of production, like we've talked about Shakira Austin in the past. We've talked about different players who are insanely productive in per minute stats. But when it comes to a full season, I just don't think that I can rely on them.
Yeah, and I mean, comparing it to the NBA, you look at players like Joel Embiid, right? Like every year it's like, oh, the offseason, you're like, oh, what if Joel Embiid plays the entire season? What if Satou Sabally plays the entire season? It'll be so exciting. Like, yes, absolutely. What if Shakira Austin plays the entire season? But sooner or later, you have to just take an objective look and be like, the realistic chances they aren't going to play a full season, and even if they are healthy, they're going to be monitored closely because they haven't played that many games before. So yeah, the trifecta of maybe playing in Eurobasket, injury prone, and joining a new team with studs in Kalia Copper and Alyssa Thomas has Satou an avoid for me. And then just touching on Julie Vanloo a little bit more too, like when she was fantastic for the Mystics last season, she's now on the expansion Valkyrie team. A lot of opportunity. And I like going into this, I was like, Julie Vanloo is, going to be one of my, sleeper picks. But then the more I see it, her ADP goes up and up and up because she's on the Valkyrie. She could be a star player. And then you also are worried about Eurobasket. And all of a sudden I'm like, I don't know if I can be like, maybe I was too high initially, but where she's at right now, I'm avoiding Vanloo.
Yeah, and about a week and a half ago, I actually had Julie Vanloo in my sleepers column. I was really high on her. I thought that she could have a really good season. But then the Valkyries played their first two preseason games, and Julie Vanloo came off the bench each time. She still saw, I think, around 15 minutes per night on in each of those games. But I like at their ADP, I would much rather have Tiffany Hayes or even like Monique Billings is available really late in drafts. That I think that Billings and Hayes will have at least similar production to what Vanloo has. And Vanloo displayed last year in Washington that she's a really productive player. She averaged 7.4 points, 4.3 assists. And like you said, last year during the WNBA show, we were talking about Julie Vanloo all the time, at least as a streaming option. I think later in the season, as the Valkyries deal with injuries, they've also had an international focus this season ahead of their first year. So maybe some of their players elect to play in Eurobasket or just leave the team to go overseas. I think that Vanloo could wind up having a larger role later on, maybe even after Eurobasket if she participates. But I think that counting on a full season of production out of her is a risky bet.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we mentioned her a couple times while talking about Vanloo and Sabally, but Shakira Austin is another player I'm going to avoid. And similar to Stewart, I don't need to go super in depth here because I talked a lot about it on Friday's show, even compared her to Christian McCaffrey for those who want to go and check out Friday's show. But Austin has played only 31 games in the last 2 seasons. That's not even a full season, right? So she's an incredibly promising player and is still young, but she's already dealing with an injury in the preseason. I think a report right before we hopped on said that she wasn't practicing today. The season's right around the corner. This is just a bunch of red flags going off. There's going to be moments where Shakira Austin has 20 points and 12 rebounds, and you're like, I can't believe Kirien told me not to draft her. But every other night when she plays 8 minutes or she's not suiting up, you're going to be thankful. I love Shakira Austin as a player, but for fantasy this season, I'm avoiding her.
Yeah, and I'm looking through her game logs right now, and it is so crazy to see the fantasy points per game. You'll see a lot of 30s, a lot of 40s. Uh, Over the first 7 games of the season last year, she had 4 double doubles. So she was off to a really, really, really strong start. And she was healthy at the start of last season, but then the injuries started to kick in, and she missed over a month due to an injury. And then she missed the last 6 games of the year due to an injury as well. So with her down the stretch, they limited her playing time. She was actually still really efficient. During the time that she played late in the season, but I don't think that the Mystics will be going into the season looking to give her like 30 minutes per night. Even with like Elena Deladon has officially retired now, so they don't have to worry about will she come back at some point. So theoretically, like if Austin was healthy, it could be her team to really step up, lead this front court that has some younger players and like Aaliyah Edwards and Kiki Iriafen, but we just can't rely on her for a full season, especially since she's going into the season with an injury already.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I think that the front court options available in the mid 50s of my rankings shows just how important it is to stock up on forwards and centers early. So with Shakira Austin, she's ranked number 56. Another player who's ranked in the mid 50s is Natasha Mack at number 57. I'm also avoiding her this year. Mack will probably have a starting role now that Brittany Griner is in Atlanta, but Mack was inconsistent as a starter when Griner was out last year. And head coach Nate Tibbetts has talked about playing positionless basketball this year, which I don't think really helps Mack's case because she'll have to play alongside like superstars in Alyssa Thomas, Satou Sabally, and Kalia Copper. So I think that at best on any given night, Mack will probably be the fourth option on this team. And I could see other players just like um, rising above her. I think Mac, to me, especially if you're in a shallow league, is like she's a fine sleeper. If you need the potential for like double digit fantasy points in any given night, I think that she's a fine bet, but I wouldn't rely on much upside out of her.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you're talking about with those mid 50 rankings is you would much rather be, around pick 60 or 65 and just having Mac fall to you as opposed to being like, I'm at pick 47 and Mac is the only forward available. And since I went guard in round 1 and 2 and didn't listen to Kirien and Jason, now I have to take Natasha Mack at pick 47, right? Like that's what we're trying to stress the importance of going forward is you can have that roster management, that decision making at the last second on which pick you're going to make. You can take just the best player available and you don't need to reach. I think there's going to be a lot of managers that have to take Natasha Mack in, the 47, 48, 49 range, just to fill out the roster. And when you're taking a player that probably not going to average 20 plus minutes per game, that's tough place to be in.
Yeah, and I will preach it every draft season that my ideal team makeup coming out of the first three rounds is 2 forward centers and 1 guard. And I think that what we've talked about today showcases just how important that is because even once you start getting to like the 23 through 30 range, instead of talking about forwards like Aaliyah Boston, Angel Reese, Jonquel Jones, who are superstars who can give you production on any given night, you're talking about players like Ezi Magbegor, Natasha Howard, Brianna Jones, even Alana Smith. Like now that Jessica Shepard is back with the team, it just adds a little bit more of a question mark that all 4 of those forward centers, even if they're going to get you decent production on some nights, you're not getting that consistency that you might get from a guard in that same range. So the guards available around there are Alicia Gray, Kelsey Mitchell, Marina Mabry, and I think that all of those I would probably prefer over the front court players. But if you stock up on too many guards too early, like if you leave the first 3 rounds with 2 guards, you really can't afford to get Alicia Gray or Kelsey Mitchell or Marina Mabry because they'll be in a utility spot and there'll be some nights where their talent is just being wasted on your team.
Yeah, I totally agree with that statement, and I think it's just a product of forwards like a lot of teams have forward like carousels was the word that I was trying to come up with, right? So like a lot of teams have their guard rotations in place, they have their starters and they have a backup, but their forwards are like, we have 4 forward centers or 5 forward centers that we really like, and we're just going to rotate them in and keep them fresh. Whereas the guards, the Marina Mabry's, those guards you're talking about in that area are playing 30 plus minutes a night, and then the forwards are playing 20 to 25, and whoever has the hot hand maybe gets a little extra minutes. But these front courts are really just these coaches, a lot of new coaches in the WNBA this year, by the way, a lot of coaches switching teams too. So that makes sense, right? Like there's just like the front court carousels right now are really difficult to handle, and that's why going early on forwards is important and grabbing those superstars that we know are going to play a lot of minutes.
Yeah, and if you do have enough space where you can like add some front court players later on just as a luxury, there are a lot of players with upside in the mid to late rounds, like Tina Charles at number 38. You've got Cameron Brink at number 49, Gabby Williams at number 51. So there are still those options that even if you don't get all 3 front court options within like the first 5 rounds, say, I think that having at least 2 within the first 3 rounds usually gives you a lot of flexibility later on.
And the last point, just to put a bow on this forward conversation, is you can stream a lot of forwards too. Like when one of the players in that carousel gets hurt, the other players all get a boost, right? And then streaming forwards becomes really important. And I think that's been more evident in years past where forwards are better streaming candidates than guards. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And so we've spent a lot of time to start the show being pessimistic. And I think that we can both attest that it's a lot more fun to be optimistic than pessimistic. So, who are
We're
some
we're
players?
online. We're online, Jason. Everybody wants to be pessimistic. All right.
Exactly. But with that, who are some players that you think could jump up a few tiers this season as breakout players?
Yeah, look, I don't want to let my fandom show through, but Kamilla Cardoso of the Chicago Sky, I am not going to say, I'm not going to put any, ifs, buts, or maybes, or coulds, or woulds, or shouldas. Kamilla Cardoso is going to take a huge leap this year. I'm only half joking when I say Angel Reese is the point guard of this team. I think she's going to play point forward a lot. I think she's going to have the ball in her hands a lot. I think she is the best rebounder in the league, and the scoring is sometimes there, sometimes not, whatever. But I think she's going to become a great playmaker. Angel Reese has a great feel for the game. She understands the game. She knows how to get to her spots. I think she's going to take a step in the playmaking department, and that's going to really help Cardoso. And they're just going to have these twin towers, playing back and forth, and it's going to, be like the 60s in the NBA, and all these old heads should be happy. But I just want to, after a slow start, some injuries, Cardoso averaged 13 points, 8.5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, nearly 2 blocks, and nearly a steal a game, and was playing 30 minutes per game over her last 13 full appearances. She got injured in the next game and then sat out the regular season finale. But in that 13-game stretch, she was performing like a top 30 player in fantasy. I think her season-long production is going to be closer to that than it was to like her overall rookie season. And if she does that, she's going to far exceed her current ADP, her current projections.
Yeah, and I think it's worth just noting that Elizabeth Williams will be healthy this year after she missed most of last season. But you look at the Sky's depth chart right now, and a lot of times we'll have a lot of like center options who just won't really see minutes. But on the Sky's center depth chart, it's Cardoso and Williams. And right now, it's looking like the starting 5 in Chicago might be Ariel Atkins, Courtney Vandersloot, Angel Reese, Kamilla Cardoso, and Kia Nurse as a guard option. But if the Sky want to play bigger, I could see Cardoso and Williams playing alongside each other in the starting lineup. And I definitely think that if it's going to be just one of Cardoso and Williams, that Cardoso will get the nod. So I think that there will be a lot of times where Cardoso will be able to really showcase the production that made her the number 3 overall pick. I think for as impressive as Angel Reese was last year, you look at that draft, Angel Reese was number 7, Kamilla Cardoso was number 3. And that goes to show just how strong her skill set is and how much that Chicago thinks that she'll be able to translate that to the WNBA.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I'm glad that you brought it up. Cardoso was picked ahead of Reese. And I think when you're talking about Williams and Cardoso, that's totally fair, and that's probably why her ADP isn't Cardoso's ADP isn't higher. And I also think letting Angel Reese handle the ball a lot is kind of why, like, is kind of shows you that they want to play all three of those bigs together at some point. Maybe not, probably not for a large stretches, but that could be an option that they can go to. And it just kind of showcases that they're prioritizing this front court. Yeah, they added some guards that to supplement Angel Reese, but this is Angel Reese's team, and I think Cardoso is probably not the second best player right now, but they want to develop her. They know if the Sky want to win anything in the next 3 to 5 years, this is the year where Cardoso takes that step. Angel Reese takes that next step into, superstar. I think Angel Reese is a star right now. I think she can be a superstar. And then Cardoso goes from, a solid rookie to like, yeah, you got to watch out for these two type of thing. And if that happens, I think Cardoso is going to be a steal in fantasy.
Absolutely. And then talking about some of the options who are available in later rounds, even if you're in a deeper league, I could really see Jacy Sheldon taking a step this year. The Sun will still have Marina Mabrey this year, and she seems to be on track to play following her offseason trade request. It sounds like Marina Mabrey had that denied. She seems relatively happy to begin the season, so I think that she'll be with them. However, I think Connecticut will really struggle overall this year, so it's possible that Mabrey is moved later on. But even if Mabrey remains with the team, I think that Sheldon will be able to carve out a role. She was a really productive college player at Ohio State, and I see her having considerably more upside than Lindsay Allen. Even if Sheldon has to sell for a bench role to start the year, I could see her carving out a much larger role later on. I think that it could even be a case if Lindsay Allen earns a starting role, it wouldn't surprise me after a few weeks to see Sheldon just replace her out of the sheer production that you might see out of Sheldon.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing there is that 3-point shot. If that, if that steps up, that Sheldon is a strong player. Sheldon was on a lot of my watch list last season, so I'm totally fine with this. And then you have the Mabrey cloud over the top that will ultimately be the difference.
For sure. And then this isn't really a breakout player, but it's more of a like remember me option in Jessica Shepard from the Lynx. I admittedly had her pretty low in my rankings, probably lower than I should have because Dorka Juhas was around. But Shepard missed the 2024 season while playing overseas, and she'll be back with the Lynx in 25. She should have plenty of opportunities to reclaim a role because Juhas will be sitting out the season for rest purposes. Shepard was a remarkably consistent player over her last two seasons in Minnesota, as she averaged 8.1 points, 7.3 rebounds, and 3.1 assists in 26.5 minutes per game. Those numbers were nearly identical between 2022 and 23, showcasing like just how consistent she can be. I actually have her projected for a slight decrease this year because the Lynx have both Alana Smith and Bridget Carleton now, and that wasn't the case the last time Shepard suited up for Minnesota. But Shepard is a late riser this year for sure. So if you've already drafted, check to see if she's on your waiver wire. And if you're drafting this week, I'd say that she definitely warrants like a late round pick. If she's there in round 7, 8, 9, I would definitely pick her up and hope that she can have some of the production that she had earlier in her career.
Yeah, and again, one of those probably front court carousel things, but she's a strong player that is going at the bottom of drafts, and if she gets the opportunity, definitely a player worth rostering.
Absolutely. And then just speaking of the Lynx front court, now that we're kind of segueing into news, I mentioned that Dorka Juhas is going to miss the 2025 season for rest purposes. The Lynx announced that her reasoning is because she wants some time off after playing competitively for 2 straight calendar years. So this is definitely some well-deserved rest. We talked about Shepard potentially stepping up in her absence, but I could also see Bridget Carleton and Alana Smith having a slight uptick in production. They were already supposed to be pretty solid players, so I think that their uptick might be a little bit minimal. But Carly Samuelson and Diamond Miller could also have larger roles than than expected. Samuelson came over from the Mystics, where she had a pretty big role last year. It was kind of a breakout year for her last season, and I was expecting a decrease after she joined the Lynx because they're just a stronger team overall. But Juhas's absence could open up the avenue for her to see production at least a little bit similar to what she saw in Washington. And then Diamond Miller, she had a really, really disappointing season last year. She dealt with an injury to start the season, but then just never really got things going after she was encouraging as a rookie. So maybe she picks things back up, but I think that with Diamond Miller, this might be kind of a make or break year for her in Minnesota, that if she can't generate a lot of production with Juhas out, then it might just not happen for her with the Lynx.
Yeah, I mean, the Diamond Miller story, 12 points, 3.5 boards, 2.5 assists, a steal per game, 32 starts in 2023. And then last year, 10 minutes per game and only appeared in 21 games. There was some injuries going on last year, but absolutely, I think it's probably a make or break season for Miller this year. You know, and obviously, like, the Lynx were really good last year and she wasn't playing. So that goes a long way in my interpretation of fantasy, is like, if you are a good player and you put up stats and your team is good, you're probably going to keep getting minutes. If you put up, if you stop playing and your team goes from bad to good, that probably means you're not going to get minutes again anytime soon. And it's tough. I was really high on Miller last year too, but I don't think I have the same juice again this season.
Yeah, and especially after the Lynx made the finals last year, I could see them just really not wanting to mess with things too much. And so it's unfortunate for Diamond Miller, but I think I'm still probably fading her until further notice. And that does it for our Monday show. On Friday, we'll be coming back at 1 p.m. Central, and we will have regular season action that night. So we'll be kind of shifting from our draft coverage and talking about bold predictions for the season. We'll give you a few waiver wire options that you could pick up to start your regular season, just to get your input on those. And we'll answer any questions that you have as the regular season begins. So be sure to join us on Friday as we preview the regular season. Thanks for watching.
Have a good one, everybody.